So, I know I said episode 2 is my favorite, but I forgot to ask, what's your favorite? For me, honestly, it has to be episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. I mean, it's so good. You've got the most epic lightsaber duel ever. You've got General Grievous looking like an absolute cool guy. You even get the love scenes, kinda like in episode 2, except it's not new love, you know? So it's a little bit of everything, if you really think about it. Exactly. Episode 2 is good. Episode 3 is just an incredible end to probably any trilogy. It might be the best ending to any trilogy ever, in my opinion. That's not crazy to say. That's not crazy to say at all. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. What's up? Hello there. General Kenobi. A man of culture, I see. Welcome back to ASMR, Scotty. Welcome in. It's ASMR, Scotty. And today we will be looking at Star Wars Episode 3 facts. There will be about 50 base facts and some bonus facts. And as always, there is a little bit of a game to this if you would like. I will tell you at the end, but this does have one fact that is intentionally left false. Can you guess it? Let's begin. Fact number 1. The medical reconstruction sequence for Vader was intentionally staged with cold, mechanical precision. Robotic arms descend from darkness. Surgical equipment rotates into place, and dialogue becomes minimal while machinery dominates the soundtrack. The scene feels less like healing and more like industrial assembly. Anakin disappears piece by piece beneath process and metal. Fact 2. Mustafar was designed around the idea of a planet in permanent geological violence. Lava erupts, collapsing rock, drifting ash, heat distortion, and rivers of molten stone were layered together to create a world that never feels stable for even a few seconds. The environment constantly threatens deconstruction. Lucas wanted the audience to feel as if the planet itself rejects stillness. Fact 3. The sound mix during Anakin's immolation reduces much of the surrounding environment complexity temporarily, allowing screams, fire, and mechanical breathing rhythms to dominate the sequence. The simplification makes the moment feel brutally intimate. The galaxy narrows down to pain, heat, and failure. Fact number 4. Lucas cited classic war films and historical epics as influence on the tone of Episode 3. Battles were designed to feel larger, harsher, and more exhausting than previous prequel conflicts. Smoke, fire, falling debris, and wounded soldiers appear more frequently throughout the film. The Clone Wars stops feeling distant or heroic. War becomes attrition. Fact 5. Lucas intentionally structured Vader's final reveal to feel emotionally hollow rather than triumphant. The armor is iconic, but the surrounding atmosphere is built around loss. Padme is gone, the Jedi are gone, and Anakin has surrendered nearly every meaningful relationship in his life. The scene does not celebrate Vader's creation, it mourns the cost of it. Fact 6. The sound design of Mustafar emphasizes constant environmental hostility. Lava bursts, grinding rock, distant eruptions, steam vents, and deep volcanic rumbles continue almost continuously beneath the duel. Unlike quieter lightsaber battles elsewhere in the saga, Mustafar rarely shows silence. The planet itself seems to roar underneath every conversation and movement. Fact 7. The screenplay intentionally gives Anakin moments of genuine heroism. Even late into his story, he rescues Chancellor Palpatine, protects allies, and expresses sincere emotional vulnerability. These moments prevent the character from becoming emotionally unreachable too early. The audience is meant to feel that redemption still seems possible right up until the final stages of his fall. Fact 8. Lucas wanted the audience to understand that Darth Vader was not created in a single moment on Mustafar. The transformation begins much earlier through compromise, secrecy, anger, and rationalization. By the time Anakin kneels before Sidious, much of the emotional damage is already complete. The armor becomes the final stage of a process that has been building for years. Fact 9. Unlike previous prequels, Episode 3 spent relatively little time introducing entirely new political systems or worlds. Instead, it focuses heavily on payoff and collapse. The film behaves more like the final act of a long tragedy than the beginning of an expanding universe. This tighter narrative focus contributes to the film's faster pacing and heavier emotional momentum. The screenplay intentionally isolates Padme from the larger war narrative as the story progresses. While armies clash across the galaxy, her scenes become quieter and more intimate, often centered around fear, uncertainty, and emotional distance. This isolation mirrors Anakin's increasing instability. This isolation mirrors Anakin's increasing inability to communicate honestly with her. Their relationship narrows emotionally even when their feelings intensify. Fact 10. The clone troopers remain emotionally unsettling throughout the film because audiences already know many Jedi trust them completely before Order 66 begins. Lucas intentionally framed many clone interactions warmly before the betrayal so the transition would feel colder and more shocking later. The emotional horror of Order 66 depends on familiarity. Friends become executioners in mere seconds. That is the first 10 facts. Do you believe you spotted the false fact? Or has it not come to pass yet? Alright. Are you sure? Could be right, could be wrong. Let's continue. Fact 11. Nick Gilliard, the prequel trilogy's stunt coordinator, described the Mustafar duel as the culmination of everything Obi-Wan and Anakin and learned together over years of fighting side by side. Their movements intentionally mirror one another throughout the battle. The duel often feels less like two strangers fighting and more like two halves of the same style turning against itself. The high ground moment was intentionally staged with emotional exhaustion rather than triumphant energy. By that stage of the duel, both characters are physically drained, emotionally broken, and barely holding themselves together. Obi-Wan's warning sounds less like arrogance and more like desperation. He is trying to stop the inevitable rather than win. Fact 13. Hayden Christensen approached Anakin Skywalker in Episode 3 with the understanding that the character was emotionally exhausted long before becoming Darth Vader. Rather than playing the role as openly evil from the beginning, Christensen focused on instability, frustration, fear, and isolation gradually overwhelming self-control. Much of Anakin's performance is built around emotional compression. His posture stiffens, his gaze lingers longer, and moments of silence begin carrying more tension than dialogue. By the middle of the film, he often appears physically present, but emotionally trapped somewhere else entirely. Fact 14. Palpatine's Force lightning effects were refined to appear more violent and unstable than previous Sith attacks in the prequels. Electrical arcs twist unpredictably across bodies and environments rather than behaving like clean energy beams. The lightning feels painful and corrosive. It behaves more like unleashed hatred than controlled weaponry. Fact 15. The scene in which Anakin kneels before Sidious was staged with strong religious and ritualistic imagery. Shadows surround the characters, while red lighting dominates the chamber, making the moment resemble a dark ceremonial initiation rather than a military alliance. The transformation into Vader begins spiritually before it becomes physical. Fact 16. The Jedi Temple interiors become darker and more empty feeling as the film approaches Order 66. Hallways widen, lighting softens, and silence becomes more noticeable between scenes. The environment begins mourning before the massacre happens. Fact 17. Christensen and McGregor spend years developing the chemistry between Anakin and Obi-Wan across the prequel trilogy. By Episode 3 intentionally pushes the relationship into something resembling fractured brotherhood. Their interactions early in the film feel relaxed, practiced, and deeply familiar. That warmth becomes essential to the emotional impact of Mustafar later. The audience needs to believe these men truly trust and care for one another before the betrayal becomes tragic rather than merely dramatic. Fact 18. The final transition from Obi-Wan delivering Luke to Tatooine into the twin sunset imagery was edited with deliberate calm after nearly non-stop tragedy and destruction throughout the final act. The quiet pacing allows the audience to breathe again for the first time in a long stretch of the film. Hope returns softly rather than triumphantly. Fact 19. The soundtrack during Order 66 shifts heavily toward mournful choral work rather than action-driven music. John Williams emphasized grief and inevitability over excitement. The music transforms the montage into something closer to a funeral unfolding across multiple planets simultaneously. Fact 20. Obi-Wan Kenobi's characterization in Episode 3 was written much closer to the calm, emotionally controlled figure audiences knew from Alec Guinness's portrayal in the original trilogy. McGregor subtly lowers his energy compared to Episode 2, relying more on restraint, patience, and measured speech. The performance creates the sense that Obi-Wan has matured through war. He feels less impulsive and more burdened, as though years of conflict have gradually worn sharpness into wisdom. We've done 20 facts now. Do you believe the fact has passed yet? Okay. That is definitely a possibility. It is. But is it the right possibility? Let's continue to find out. Are you ready? Perfect. Fact 21. Ian McDiarmid was finally allowed to fully reveal Palpatine's darker personality after spending 2 previous films hiding much of the character behind political performance. Episode 3 transforms him from patient manipulator into open predator. McDiarmid shifts vocal rhythms constantly throughout the film, moving between warm mentorship, theatrical menace, exhaustion, mockery, and explosive rage. The character becomes frightening partly because he seems to enjoy every stage of the collapse. Fact 22. The color palette around Anakin becomes progressively more hostile as the film advances. Warm Jedi temple tones give way to harsher reds, blacks, and volcanic orange by the final act. Even before he fully becomes Vader, the visual world around him begins resembling Sith imagery. Fact 24. The relationship between Anakin and Palpatine was written with deliberate emotional intimacy. Palpatine praises Anakin constantly, validates his frustrations, and positions himself as someone who understands him better than the Jedi do. Palpatine does not simply tempt Anakin with power. He offers emotional recognition at moments when Anakin feels increasingly isolated. Fact 24. The Jedi Temple attack sequence were intentionally shot with darker lighting and quieter pacing than many large battle scenes elsewhere in the film. Hallways echo, smoke drifts slowly, and deconstruction often appears after violence has already happened. This approach makes the Temple Massacre feel haunting rather than triumphant. Fact 25. Buzz droids in the opening battle were animated with insect-like persistence and tiny mechanical aggression. Their movements are fast, twitching, and invasive as they tear apart starfighters piece by piece. The sequence transforms machinery maintenance into something resembling infestation. 26. The "You were my brother, Anakin" confrontation became one of the emotional centerpieces of the prequel trilogy because the film spends so much time establishing warmth and familiarity between the characters beforehand. The confrontation works because the relationship already feels real before it breaks apart. Fact 27. The lava effect on Mustafar required extensive simulation work to create believable heat, viscosity, and movement. Viscosity and movement? We'll see. Animators studied volcanic footage to understand how molten rock folds, bursts, hardens, and carries light across its surface. The lava was treated almost like a living environmental character. Fact 28. Clone Trooper communication during Order 66 remains calm and procedural despite the emotional weight of the event unfolding. Commands are acknowledged with military efficiency rather than aggression. That restraint makes the betrayal feel colder and the executions sound operational rather than personal. Fact 29. R2-D2's action sequences aboard the Invisible Hand intentionally balance comedy with wartime chaos. Flames, spinning environments, and collapsing systems surround him while he continues operating with determined precision. The contrast helps preserve traces of classic adventure tone before the film descends fully into tragedy. Fact 30. The opening rescue mission aboard General Grievous's flagship was designed to mirror a classic swashbuckling adventure before the story darkens. Anakin and Obi-Wan banter and improvise like brothers who have fought together for years. That warmth is intentional. The film allows viewers to enjoy friendship before dismantling it. That is 30 facts. Do you believe you've spotted the false fact, or has it passed yet? That's actually a fair guess. Is it right? Is the real question. Are you confident in that? Well, let's continue and see if you're correct. Fact 31. General Grievous was designed to feel physically unstable and partially unfinished, like a living being trapped inside machinery that no longer fits correctly. His coughing, twitching, and exposed organs reinforce the idea that he exists in constant mechanical strain. The character functions partly as visual foreshadowing for Darth Vader. Fact 32. General Grievous's wheel bike movement was animated to feel unstable at high speed, with subtle bouncing and uneven terrain interaction. The vehicle behaves more like dangerous machinery than smooth futuristic transport. The motion creates constant tension that the machine could lose control at any moment. Fact 33. The clone trooper armor in Episode 3 was subtly redesigned to move visually closer toward Imperial Stormtrooper armor from the original trilogy. The shapes become smoother, cleaner, and more emotionally impersonal. The soldiers themselves visually evolve into instruments of authoritarian control. Fact 34. The final montage deliberately crosscuts between hope and defeat rather than separating them cleanly. Luke and Leia survive, but the Empire rises simultaneously. New beginnings and catastrophic loss unfold together. Fact 35. The scene where Vader learns Padme has died was staged inside an enormous dark chamber with very little visual distraction. Lucas wanted the emotional focus isolated almost entirely into the character's reaction and echoing emptiness around him. The room feels cavernous and hollow, amplifying the sense that Vader has lost nearly everything before his new life has even begun. Fact 36. Utapau's wind and ambient sound layers were designed to create the sensation of enormous hollow depths throughout the sinkhole city. Air constantly moves through unseen spaces beneath the platforms. The planet sounds empty in a way that feels geological rather than peaceful. Fact 37. The Jedi Council's chambers were intentionally staged with wider spacing and colder lighting during Episode 3. Characters often appear physically separated within the room, emphasizing emotional distance and institutional isolation. Even before the Jedi fall, the environment around them begins to feel emptier. Fact 38. The Wookiee tree platforms were designed with layered rope bridges, woven structures, and natural materials to contrast sharply against the increasing industrial architecture dominating the Republic elsewhere in the film. Kashyyyk feels handmade in a galaxy becoming mechanized. Fact 39. The opening battle intentionally avoids carefully orienting the audience before combat begins. Fighters, cruisers, explosions, and debris appear immediately in layered motion. The audience enters the conflict mid-chaos rather than a calm setup. In Fact 40, the film's final scenes, connecting directly into Star Wars: A New Hope, created one of the strongest continuity bridges in the franchise. Luke arriving on Tatooine, Leia on Alderaan, and Vader beside the Death Star all function like emotional handoffs into the original trilogy. Episode 3 gradually transforms into the beginning of another story. Alright. 10 remaining facts. Do you think the fact has passed? You've only got 20% chance that it hasn't passed. You've got an 80% chance that it has. What do you think? Okay. That's a good guess. Do you want to lock that in? Alright, I won't hold you to it. At the end of the day, we're just having fun here. Fact 41. More than any other prequel film, Revenge of the Sith transformed hindsight into storytelling. The audience already knows where the galaxy is heading, so the emotional power comes from watching every choice slowly lock the future into place. By the final sunset, inevitability itself has become part of the tragedy. Fact 42. Palpatine's spinning Senate pod attack was intentionally exaggerated to feel theatrical and almost operatic. The movement is aggressive, dramatic, and visually absurd in scale. Lucas leaned into the idea that Sidious fights with overwhelming force and spectacle rather than disciplined restraint. Fact 43. Palpatine's office and costume design gradually darkened throughout the film, alongside his increasing consolidation of power. Rich reds, deep shadows, black robes, and heavy textures begin dominating his surroundings. The Empire visually exists before it politically exists. Fact 44. Large fans were used during parts of the Mustafar shoot to blow ash fabric hair and smoke continuously across the set. Lucas wanted the environment to feel physically aggressive rather than visually static. The constant motion prevents the duel from ever feeling calm. Even the air appears hostile. Fact 45. The crash landing sequence on Coruscant was designed to resemble a damaged aircraft struggling to survive re-entry. Smoke trails, violent vibrations, and failing control systems dominate the scene. The cruiser feels heavy, unstable, and moments away from catastrophic collapse. Fact 46. The operating droids involved in Vader's reconstruction move with uneven, hesitant precision that mirrors Anakin's physical suffering. Their motions subtly pause and react to the severity of the procedure. The sensitivity of the machinery intensifies the tragedy. Fact 47. Obi-Wan and Anakin's lightsabers cast colored interactive light onto nearby surfaces during portions of the duel. Blue and red illumination flickers across skin, smoke, and volcanic debris. The weapons become moving light sources inside the chaos, and emotion and environment begin visually blending together. Order 66 scenes were distributed across dramatically different planetary environments to reinforce the scale of betrayal. Forests, alien swamps, deserts, temples, and battlefields all become execution sites within minutes. The visual variety makes the purge feel galaxy-wide instead of localized. There's nowhere the Jedi can escape it. The death of Ki-Adi-Mundi was staged with increasing blaster intensity and mounting confusion rather than immediate realization. He initially continues leading troops before understanding, too late, that the attack has shifted towards him. That hesitation makes the betrayal feel psychologically sharper. Trust delays survival. So I ask one final time, which fact do you believe was false? If you guessed fact 46, you were correct. Here's the real version of that fact. The operating droids involved in Vader's reconstruction move with smooth, uninterrupted precision that contrasts sharply against Anakin's physical suffering. Their motions never hesitate or react emotionally. The difference of the machinery intensifies the tragedy. That is it for today's video. And this does mark the end of the original saga. Going through episodes 1 through 6 has been an absolute blast. I feel like we've learned so much. And if you've stayed this long, I want to tell you a little bit about the editing of the video, because it may have looked super unintentional throughout, like I was just piecing together things, when in reality, I was mixing just the same as episode 3. I wanted to create the initial 50 facts and then interweave bonus facts into those initial spaces, so it felt a little less controlled, a little less intentional, a little more chaotic to match the actual vibe of the movie. So, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope we can do many more of these with the sequel trilogy, with shows, games, heck, books might be on the table, or we may just go into other franchises like Pokemon, or Lord of the Rings, or Marvel, or maybe some other stuff. But for now, that's it. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for watching. I will see you in the next video.